Do you know what the word bitter means? Have you ever had tasted something and it just maybe was kind of sour, but just didn't quite taste right, and it just kind of gave you that feeling? Well, sometimes when people are mean to us, we have a tendency to become that way towards them, kind of an angry, like we don't really want to be around them. And when Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, he did not become bitter. When his brothers appeared in Egypt, Joseph could have refused to help them, but he didn't. He could have had them killed, but he didn't. Instead, he chose to be good. And Jesus, too, was betrayed, and he wasn't bitter. Like Joseph, he chose not to retaliate. He chose not to punish them. Instead, he extended grace. He asked his Father to forgive them. And God's goodness overcomes evil. Isn't that exciting?
Grain, like wheat, barley, millet, and buckwheat, were boiled, roasted, or ground into flour for bread.
I love food. What's one of your favorite foods? Is it a blizzard? It's one of mine. That's one of mine. I have myself a Butterfinger blizzard with Heath pieces. It's so good. Is it so good? Is it worth driving 30 minutes for? What about you? Your favorite food? Would you be willing to drive 30 minutes for your favorite food? Well, today's story talks about something like that, but they didn't drive. They probably walked. They probably didn't ride horses or camels. They probably walked. So Joseph was ruling Egypt. And at that time, he was in charge of all the food. Remember, there was the years of good food, and then there were good times, and then there was the years of bad times that they called famine. The land was not growing. Food was not growing in the land, and people came from all over Egypt, from other lands even, to buy food from Joseph. Even Joseph's family in Canaan, his dad and his brothers and their families, they needed food. And Jacob, Joseph's father, said to his grown-up sons, I've heard that there is grain in Egypt, so go down there and buy some for us so that we can live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers loaded their donkeys, and they packed silver for the grain. But Jacob would not let Benjamin, the youngest, go to Egypt. So he must have had 12 sons then, right? That's right, he did. 10 of them went, Benjamin stayed, but Joseph was in Egypt. So Jacob had already lost Joseph, who was his favorite son, and he did not want anything to happen to his son Benjamin, who was another one of his favorites. The 10 brothers, they traveled for many days, and when they finally arrived in Egypt, they were part of a very hungry crowd, because all of the travelers were there to meet one man. You know who that was? If you guessed Joseph, that's absolutely correct. It had been 20 years since the brothers had seen Joseph. So now Joseph was an adult, and Joseph probably looked more like an Egyptian prince than he did a Canaanite. So his brothers had no idea who he really was. He probably wore his clothes like the Egyptians. We think the Egyptians, maybe put coal around their eyes, so maybe he wore coal around his eyes. Maybe he shaved his head, and maybe he wore a special hairpiece. We don't know. We don't have any pictures exactly of what he looked like. We can only guess. Well, so his brothers had no idea who he really was, and they, of course, bowed down to him to ask for help. But even though they didn't know who he was, Joseph knew exactly who they were. So of course he recognized them. He remembered that his brothers had sold him, and they had made fun of his dreams that he had had. And in that dream, remember, they were going to bow down to him. Here they were, bowing down to him. Joseph didn't want these men to know yet who he was. So he also didn't know if they had changed at all. So he wanted to learn if they had learned to be kinder, or if they were still mean to other people. So he asked where they were, who they were, where they were from, and what they were doing in Egypt. And then he accused them of being spies. No, the men said, we are not spies. We are brothers. There were 12 of us. Our youngest brother is at home with our father, and one brother is not alive. But Joseph said, it is just as I told you. You are spies. To prove that you are not, then one of you must go get your little brother and bring him back here, and the rest of you are going to stay here in jail. If you don't, I will know that you are spies. Then Joseph put them all in jail for 3 days. And after the 3 days, he told them, I fear God. And if you are honest, only one of you needs to stay in jail. The rest of you may take food to your families, but you must bring back your brother to me, and then I will know that you're telling the truth. So the men got ready to go home, and they said to each other, this is happening because of what we did to Joseph all those years ago. We're being punished. Reuben, the oldest, he said, I told you not to hurt him. Now we have to pay for what we did. Gosh, the brothers had not forgotten the horrible thing that they had done when they had sold Joseph as a slave. And maybe they really had changed. The brothers didn't know it, but Joseph had understood every word they said. See, he was listening. Joseph kept Simeon in Egypt, and then he sent the 9 other brothers home. But first he had his servants put them in silver back into their bags of grain. Joseph was giving his brothers the grain and that money. When the brothers arrived home, they told Jacob what had happened. And if we don't take Benjamin back with us, they said, Simeon's going to be stuck in jail and we won't be able to buy food. Jacob wasn't happy. Joseph is gone, now Simeon's gone, and now you want Benjamin? My son will not go down there with you. Now what would they do? The brothers would soon need more grain, but until Benjamin went with them, there was no point in going back to Egypt. But that's not the end of the story. I look forward to seeing you guys next week as we continue our journey with Joseph.
Titus 3:1. Be ready to do whatever is good. Titus 3:1.